Time now for a closer look at some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Auditor John Dougal, aka the Million Vote Man, and State Representative Suzanne Harrison. Representative, not quite a million votes, but still a convincing win for you as well. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, good to be with you, Glenn.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Let's get right into the COVID vaccine. Representative, let's start with you. Would like to get your thoughts on this, being that you're someone on the front lines. How should the distribution process work in the state of Utah?
Well, certainly I think the key is to make sure people get good information about the vaccine and the safety of the vaccine. While this vaccine was developed quickly by a host of amazing scientists and doctors, no corners were cut on safety, and it will be safe. And I'm going to get vaccinated. I encourage all of you to get vaccinated when it is available. And certainly an independent group of experts is looking at how that should be rolled out. Healthcare workers on the front lines will be top of list. Other folks like long-term care facility residents, essential workers, which I include teachers and childcare providers and first responders, should also be top of list.
John, what are the key factors you're looking at as we begin distribution of this vaccine?
Well, clearly I anticipate it'll go to medical professionals and so forth first. I think there's going to be a rush of folks that are interested in it, and there's also going to be a set of folks that are going to cautiously watch to see what happens as it rolls out. And then another set that it's not left or right, it's just we've got a group of folks that are anti-vaccine, and I think we'll see that play out as we look at it. I think there's going to be some concern if you start to give the vaccine to elderly, and some are going to die just because they're old. And then people are going to be skeptical somewhat of the vaccine, that is the vaccine killing people. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I think there's going to be some narrative about that.
Let's dig into that a little bit more. I've been told that it needs to be somewhere between 70 to 80% of the population that needs to take this for it to be effective. Representative, do you see us reaching those numbers in the state of Utah?
I hope so. And I just urge people again, when you have a sick loved one or a sick child, you don't go to your Facebook account for information on how to help your child. You go to your doctor or your primary care provider. And I really encourage people to go to reputable sources. Sources like the Centers for Disease Control, CDC.gov, has really good information and reputable information about the safety of this vaccine and how to overcome those fears. Certainly, no one should be forced to have a medical procedure or an injection, but getting good information is going to be key.
John, your thoughts on that? Will we reach that level of those getting the vaccine in the state of Utah?
I think ultimately we'll probably reach those levels. The question is over what period of time. Do I think we're going to get there in the next 6 months? No, I'm skeptical on that. I think there's going to be, like I said, a set of folks that are going to want to see how it plays out with other folks. Are there any longer term effects that might impact them? But over time, as people see that the vaccine works, that it provides benefit, that business starts to open up, I think more and more folks will get the vaccine.
Let's talk a little bit more about Operation Warp Speed. This happened very quickly. Your thoughts on how it all came from, the virus coming here to America and having this vaccine in less than a year. Representative, your thoughts there?
This is really unprecedented. The amount of work and expertise that has gone into this and the speed at which this has happened is really phenomenal. And I credit the Trump administration in focusing on this, and also all the scientists that have been involved. And I want to just emphasize that even though we have wonderful news about a highly effective series of vaccines, it's not going to be widely available to the majority of the public for months. So we need to make sure we remain committed to these very basic public health measures that we all know about, the washing hands, physical distancing, wearing a mask to get us through this winter and literally save lives and prevent unnecessary illness.
I want to ask you that follow up on that, Representative. You mentioned the efficacy upwards of 90–95%. That's incredible. I mean, not even the flu vaccine reaches those levels, does it?
It's truly phenomenal, and I just am so grateful to everyone who's worked on it.
Okay, John, your thoughts on Operation Warp Speed and how this came together so quickly?
So I think Operation Warp Speed has some benefit and has helped accelerate some things, but remember the Pfizer vaccine did not go through Operation Warp Speed. It was just purely a private sector activity to speed it along. But I think what we see is the power of modern medicine. While the mRNA vaccine is new for humans. This is the first time we'll use it in humans. It's been in animals for over a decade. They've been using this kind of technology.
Let's get into another topic real quick. Want to move along, that being COVID relief funds. Local businesses calling on the governor to release upwards of somewhere around $230 million. As of recording, the governor had not laid out his plan for doing so. Representative, how do you think that money should be spent?
Well, certainly we have a host of small businesses, restaurants that are really suffering right now. We need to make sure that we're addressing their needs and the needs of their workers. Our local public schools need more support in addressing the various needs that COVID is presenting. I think food insecurity, housing insecurity would be top of my list, in addition to public health support as well.
John, how should this money be spent?
I think the money should be targeted. Too often it's parachuted to lots of folks that aren't in need, or businesses that are doing just fine. It should be targeted. But I come from the perspective, when the government is either temporarily restricting or shutting down your business, there should be some form of compensation for that kind of activity. And I think it's some of those areas that the money should be focused on.
Okay, real quick follow-up for you, John. What's the holdup? Local businesses are moving forward with lawsuits over this right now.
So part of the hang-up is money was allocated and distributed to various organizations and entities across the state, but it has to be spent by basically the end of the year. And so what the governor's office is looking at is what money hasn't yet been spent, and then clawing that back to say, how do they reallocate that?
Okay, on Wednesday, the Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes, joining a lawsuit asking the Supreme Court to overturn election results in 4 states the president lost. Those would be Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Representative Harrison, is that how the Attorney General should be spending his time?
You know, I'm really concerned about this. The Trump administration and his attorneys have filed over 50 lawsuits and only had 1 win on a technicality. The rest have been shown to be without merit, without evidence. It's a serious allegation to say that an election was unfair, and it demands that you bring significant evidence to prove that. And this has not been done in the courts, and I am really concerned that our state is getting involved in this way. I really encourage our Attorney General to address the needs of Utahns and the job that he was elected to do. And as someone who lost an election by just 3 votes, I know it hurts sometimes to lose an election.
That's close.
But this has gone through the courts, and it's time for everyone to put their big boy pants on and move on for the good of the country.
John, your thoughts on this? Is this something you want to see our Attorney General engaging in?
Well, I think the broader question is really, the Constitution says legislators are the one that set the rules in regards to elections. And what we've seen over this year is, in some places, not the legislators have set the rules, but non-legislative actors have changed the rules, changed the requirements for dates, changed the requirements for signatures, other things like that. And so if we get back to making clear that it's the legislators in each of those states that makes the rules, then I do think that's an important way to spend one's time.
But do you think there's a case there? Can they make a case in these 4 states?
I think there are some areas where they could make some cases. Will it change the outcome of the election? I think that's highly unlikely, but I think it's still on principle good to remind folks this is what the Constitution says and this is why it matters.
The Attorney General insists this is not about politics. Representative, is this about politics?
I'm concerned because the Homeland Security, Trump appointed, head of cybersecurity for elections, has stated multiple times this was the most secure election in our nation's history. And I'm concerned, as a person who cares about states' rights, for other states to be intervening in other states' elections when there's really no evidence of significant fraud in any way.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. I want to get to one last topic really quick. This is the Promise Act introduced by Senator Lee. His goal is to hold big tech companies accountable for what he says is political bias. 30 seconds each. Do these social media platforms practice political bias? John, let's start with you.
Yes, I think it does. And one of the key things is if they say they're not going to be in bias and then they do engage in bias, then that's a misrepresentation of their business. But I do not think they should be compelled to speak on behalf of the government in a way the government wants.
Representative.
I share the senator's concern about the influence that big tech has on our public discourse, and certainly those policies need to be clear and applied consistently and fairly. But I think what this issue is really about is misinformation in social media. And we have situations where we have people believing that COVID is a hoax. You know, we have people threatening election officials throughout this country for doing their job because of misinformation on social media.
Okay.
And it is their obligation to address that for the good of the public and to prevent harm or injury in the public sphere.
Okay, we have run out of time. Great conversation. Thanks to both of you for being here today.
Always great to join you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.